Okay, I have very wonderful memories of teaching English at Mount Carmel for 19 years. And I know many of you who see this video will remember being in my English classes. I did my best to teach, whether it was in the ad building where I started out, in the science building I taught, and also in the annex off to the library. And I had great experiences with my students. The thing that kept me, besides God, at Mount Carmel all those years were my students. I loved them. I enjoyed them. I loved to teach them. I love every one of them today. And when I go back for reunions, I love to meet them again and talk to them or see them on Facebook. I see many of them and of you all and what you're doing on Facebook, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So I spent many years, a good many years even teaching in the administration building, and I lived in our house so close to it that I could run up and down and get in there all the time. And I have a funny story about the old chapel building. We used to play in there. We played things we saw, graduations, and we'd go to the old clothes room, and we'd find old clothes to dress up in, and we'd have weddings, and we'd have graduations, and we would march, and we would do things that we had seen ourselves when we were growing up. And so we would spend time doing all kinds of things in the old chapel and in the other classrooms, because there was room C where I had English, I remember. It was right off the platform of that chapel building. And that was where, when they had plays and all, that's where people would go and they would change their costumes or get ready to go back out on stage. And so we saw all those things happen, and so we would mimic it in our play. One day, there was a dog, I can't remember for sure who Brownie belonged to, but we played with Brownie, and my sister and one of her friends, Bob Richards, they took Brownie into the chapel and they were going to get him saved. And so they took him up to the altar and made him kneel, and they prayed like they heard adults pray, and they pounded on his back like they heard adults do, and said, "Pray, pray, Brownie, pray it through, pray, pray." I wasn't in on it, but I watched it, and I will remember that to this day of a memory that I'll never forget out of the administration building. So there was also, when the clinic was up, before many of you came to school there, was up in the room where I used to be lying in a bassinet. When I was little, they made that into the clinic, and boys and girls and everybody had to go up there to go to the clinic. And when the guys came up, since it was the girls' dorm, when they got to the top of the stairs, they had to yell, "Man in the hall." And so they would yell that, then they would go into the clinic. Well, I remember when I was in elementary school, we would line up outside that clinic up on the main floor of the administration building to get our typhoid fever shots. We got 1, 2, and 3. Then we had to get a booster every other year, and I didn't like shots. So I'd get at the back of the line, and I thought, about 7th grade, I thought, this is silly. I shouldn't be so afraid of shots, so I made myself get to the front of the line right outside the clinic door and got the first shot, and to this day I've never been afraid of shots again. But that was the clinic, and that's how we went to get treatment for anything, students or elementary kids or whatever. And so those are many of the memories that I had. They're precious because that was my life for about 40 years. I lived there, I went to school there, I taught there, I played with the children that were children of my co-workers, and had a lot of fun watching them grow up. That was life for me. I took hikes around around the campus and went to the creek and got all wet and did all kinds of things around the campus. But life centered for me for many years at the administration building, because that's where my mother worked and that's where I started school. My very first day in school was in the basement of the administration building until they got our house built and they could use our basement. Sat around a big old table. There was just first grade then. They just started the elementary school, and there were 4 of us. And we sat around a table and learned there. Later, I spent many hours doing laundry, old Wringer washing machines, carrying them and hanging them up outside the administration, bringing them back and folding sheets and towels after camp meeting or commencement when so many visitors were there. And we had to iron. We ironed for the faculty, and we had to even iron white shirts with these old sat irons that we put on the fire. And then we'd pick it off the fire, and it might have soot on it, and we'd try to wipe it off on a board they had there with a little tin on one side, and it had cloth on the other side so we wouldn't get soot on the clothes. Well, every now and then the iron was too hot and it might scorch something. We'd have to take it outside the ad building, lay it in the sun and put lemon on it or something to get the scorch out. So I spent many hours in the summer working in that laundry room, and I have lots of memories with students that I worked with and folding sheets together and piling them up and doing all the fun things we did. Even though it was hard work, there were days when we had lots of fun working together. And they even used to use those burners where we put our irons to dry corn. And my parents would go over there and they would dry corn in that basement of the ad building on those little old stoves that were there. And they had wire they put on top of it, and they put all the corn there and dry it out. Now, I don't remember what they used it for after they dried the corn, but I remember that that's what they did. Maybe they used it to cook in something and later, because I don't think we had anything other than maybe trying to can something, have any way of working with the corn that they raised. So memories are precious. Life was precious there. It will always be in my heart because that's where I spent the first 40 years of my life. Thank you for letting me share with you, and to all of my students that are out there, I still love you. Come see me anytime if you're in Lexington. God bless each of you.